Hello and welcome to the live stage here at the Agriland Pavilion at the National Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska in County Laois. It's a bit wet outside, so if you're watching us on the live stream on your phone or on the ploughing site, be sure and come down to us here at stand 305 row 18. We have a roof on the building so you can stay dry for a little while as you listen to our discussion between the presidents of many of our big farm organisations in this country. I'm joined on our panel discussion today by President of the Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association, Dermot Kelleher, Tim Cullinan, President of the Irish Farmers Association, and Pat McCormack, President of the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association. Thanks for joining me on our first live panel discussion today on the live stream in association with UPMC. First, Tim Cullinan, I'll go to you. The IFA recently held protests at various political think-ins and around the country over a number of issues. There was nitrates, late payments, even the sheep sector. What, if anything, do you think these protests achieved?
Yeah, I suppose, look, obviously it's been a very difficult and challenging year for farmers, first of all. We've seen, obviously, the weather, number one, dealing with the weather, and obviously the reduction in the price of milk in particular, and I suppose the livestock sector, the schemes that the minister's coming up with, and the complexity around those schemes, and I suppose the value in them as well, and the sheep sector, like consistently for the last 12 months, we've been explaining to the minister. Last year we've seen a margin of €7 per ewe for the sheep sector, totally not good enough. You look at forestry, you look at tillage, concerns around all of those. So I suppose the two key areas at the moment, number one of the main reasons we're out there, obviously, is the delay in the payments coming out to farmers this year. Like no other sector in society would put up with having to wait an extra month for their salary. And this is farmers' salary this time of the year. The ANC should be out this week. It's not out. It won't be out for another month. And the first base is due out in a number of weeks as well. That's not going to happen either. And the department, I'm hearing that our IT systems are not up and ready to do this. Like, we were one of the first countries to have our CAP strategic plan returned to Brussels for approval. So our department has, since the 1st of January this year to now, to get the system up and running. But I suppose the other concern, obviously, is the nitrates derogation. And you asked me what did we achieve last week. But I suppose on Monday we had a meeting with the Taoiseach and the Minister for Agriculture in the Horse and Jockey in Thurles. We achieved very little there. All we got from the Taoiseach was he would reflect on the situation about continuing with the derogation as it is. And on Friday we had a meeting with the Taoiseach, and he committed to understanding how serious the situation it was. We had a young farmer in the room, and she explained to him her concern: 200 cows. This would mean losing 27 cows, or sales of anything up to 60,000 per year, or a farmer with 48 cows going down to 42, and obviously a loss of sales there as well. So the Taoiseach committed to writing to Commissioner Serkefish, who is the Commissioner in Europe, the Commissioner for Environment, with a view to bringing. Our request was that this Commissioner would come to Ireland with his officials to explain to him what we as farmers are doing. And as we know, farmers have taken on in excess of 30 measures since 2018 in derogation. We've worked around emissions and all of that. But what has happened, I'd have to say, what has happened in the last 48 hours is nothing short of pandering by our Minister, number one. Like, the Taoiseach agreed to do this. Now our Minister was actually in Brussels yesterday. I was in Brussels myself as well yesterday. And our Minister is out in Brussels saying we cannot continue with the derogation as it is. I personally, on the fringes of another meeting that I was attending yesterday, met with the Commissioner in Brussels yesterday, and he was very clear that we can do this without slaughtering animals, number one. He understands. I explained to him the concern of the farmers here in Ireland. He gets that, and he is awaiting the invitation from our Taoiseach to come to Ireland. So that's what we achieved from the protest last week.
Well, I will go to the nitrates in just a moment, but in terms of the late payments, for example, the IFA has been boycotting the farmers' chartered meetings because of that. Are you now going to re-engage with those meetings as an organisation?
No, look, we made all those points with the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach last week. We still haven't, to be honest, we haven't seen any movement on the payments to date. And so we were still, only a half an hour ago, our people over in the stand were trying to convince the Minister he needs to get this money out and get, in particular around the ANC, there was absolutely no change in that scheme whatsoever.
Pat McCormack from the ICMSA. The nitrates issue is one that particularly affects your membership. Are farmers prepared to make these changes quite soon now?
Well, you see, you can't be prepared. No farmer could be prepared for these changes. Obviously, we only got the NMP statement out in the last number of weeks. I suppose if you go back on this, in March 2022, the department agreed with the Commission in Europe about a review based on water quality results in August 2023, but those water quality tests would have been carried out in August 2022. So that's the challenge. We needed a further 12 months. There's a lot of family farm models out there that are going to be, their viability is going to be undermined as a result of this. Tim gave the example of the guy with 48 cows going to 42. Like, that's a huge impact for somebody who's trying to send a kid to school or to college in the family farm model, and that is the most sustainable model that's out there, But
the criteria is the criteria. If the water quality is not up to scratch,
well,
they're trying to protect water quality as well.
The difficulty here, Stella, is certainly, and it's in all our interest, that the water quality improves over a period of time and that we meet our emission target of 25%. While they're two separate targets, they're both together. The trend in water quality since 2012 had been challenging. Now, for the first time ever in 2022, we saw a stabilisation of water quality results on the back of a change in practice on farm, predominantly driven by the war in the Ukraine, it's fair to say, and the rollout of low emission slurry spreaders and the reduced fertiliser. Now, the scientists tell us, and I'm only a farmer, the scientists tell us that the period of time between the change in practice and water quality results will take between 20 and 30 months. Now, we saw stabilisation in a 6-month period. So I do believe that the measures that we've taken will deliver improved water quality in the years ahead. And, that's where farmers and farm families and those 3,500 approximately farmers who were affected by this change in derogation rules can feel particularly aggrieved. That while they do all the right things and the things that they're told to do, the things that will deliver results, they haven't been afforded the opportunity to prove that they will deliver.
Well, the Agriculture Minister would say that there is, they're not for turning in the European Commission at the minute. Obviously, Tim has mentioned there that the Taoiseach is saying something different. I don't know whether it's a bit of politics going on here with locals and European elections in the offing, but if it's not going to change, dairy farmers won't have a choice.
And that's where the challenge is. I haven't met the man that makes more land. It's going to put pressure on all farmers as regards the land rental market. And, I suppose this time last year there was a degree of unrealism out there in the prices that were paid. Unfortunately, Tim alluded to it, we've seen 25 cents a litre come off the price of milk at now below the cost of production. We've seen beef prices come back, and we've seen the tillage sector suffer a nightmare of a year from an economic perspective. So one would imagine that won't stimulate the market and that there'll be common sense in the marketplace. The alternative is to contract rear younger stock. It doesn't suit everybody. Cut back the national herd. And this is a critical issue because there's an animal welfare issue here. If we cut back the national herd overnight, it's going to undermine the beef industry and the beef prices, and we don't want to see that happen. There's a lot of animals out there now that are 3, 4, 5 months in calf. Are they to be slaughtered? Is this what the European Union want? And I suppose, if you were an affected farmer, the one thing you'd be hoping for is that they'd at least be a further 12-month lead-in period.
Dermot Kelleher, Pat mentioned there obviously milk price and beef price, but sheep price is another area that has been up and down this year really, and the ICSA in particular has been constantly calling for extra supports for sheep. Nothing too positive in the offing at the minute in terms of supporting the sheep sector.
Not at the moment, no, but like this €12 a year in the cap is the rising figure. Most people lambing yours are rock at a loss. And finishing beef next winter could be a mug's game because there's no guarantee. And like the sucking game is roughly, could be either way, you know. So the dry stock sector are under massive pressure every way you look. And like to me, it seems that as for the derogation, the biggest problem with us is that people, if the derogation isn't something to do with it, all the any dry stock man that's running deep in the ground, be blown out of the water now by dairy farmers. They'll have to get land for their derogation. But it seems to me that the 7 or 8 or 10,000 farmers in derogation seem to be more important than the other 100,000 farmers that we try to represent, the dry stock farmers.
Well, I suppose every sector is fighting for itself, Dermot, at the minute. Like, I mean, the dairy sector are suffering with milk price. The sheep sector are suffering with lack of supports, I suppose, and it not being maybe a more viable revenue stream for future farming. A lot of beef farmers and a lot of sheep farmers have gone part-time now. But do you envisage any sort of extra support coming, for example, in Budget 2024? Like, I mean, I know ICSA has previously been trying to get bar funding and it's more or less been ruled out. Is there any other way that there could be extra supports to keep sheep farming as a viable future option?
It's strange how bar funding could be used for the genomic testing, but it can't be used for sheep. And no one ever explained to me what is the difference. You know what I mean? You're going to use it for one thing, but you can't use it for something else. And I believe is that unless something is done, because there's big parts of this country down the Western Seaboard that's not fit for dairying, maybe.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of small rural communities that the sucking cows and the sheep are keeping the communities alive. And if something isn't done soon, this thing is not going to, it won't last. Young fellas not going to walk for nothing anymore. It doesn't make sense that you would walk lambing sheep or calving cows and you know that you probably won't make a bob before the year is out. It's not going to last unless something is done.
Tim, I'll go back to you. Something I suppose Dermot was mentioning there, and the farmers in derogation are probably the ones that are most topical at the minute, but the sheep farmers have always been the same. They're up and down, they're fighting for a living. You have the beef farmers trying to get a better price for beef. It's been up and down, not so bad, I suppose, in recent weeks. But is there a bit of a disconnect between the sectors in agriculture in Ireland? I mean, is it maybe more of a time now that the sectors have to kind of come together, that the farm orgs nearly have to come together and speak with one voice for agriculture in Ireland when it's going to a bigger platform such as Europe, because being disjointed seems to be working against us. And then with the way things are going, like Pat mentioned there, you know, if you're going to be contract rearing or if you have to go more land, maybe dairy needs to be working more with tillage, for example. We can't push out the sheep farmers at the expense of dairy farmers who need the land. You know, what can we do here in this regard?
Yeah, look, first of all, on Dermot's point, absolutely, in fairness to Dermot, and his people have been pushing for an increased payment for sheep farmers on the O payment. We've been doing the same, and I suppose the one common denominator here around the nitrates derogation is the availability of land. As we all know, there's a huge pressure on that resource. So if you look at, the Minister has a grand plan to increase the tillage sector, grow the forestry sector, increase the amount of land that a farmer will require if he wants to continue dairy farming. But I think we need to look at this in the round, and absolutely it's very important that we can work together on this. But if we look at this, I'm going to ask the question here, like, what is really going on here? We know there's people inside in the current government would love to see a reduction in cow numbers. Let's call a spade and be clear here. That's what it's been.
Well, are you saying that's driven by the Green Party?
No, yeah, I do, and I would beg the question.
Well, just to play devil's advocate, Eamon Ryan would say that he's not looking for a cull in the national herd. He said he's just trying to reduce emissions, and there's ways of doing that without.
But who is our minister listening to here? Like, I think what we have seen played out over the last number of days is an absolute disgrace. Like, we have a minister that was over in Brussels yesterday advocating for a reduction in this, and this is going to lead to...
Are you referring to Charlie McConalogue?
Charlie McConalogue,
yeah.
I am, yes. I am, and I beg the question, you know, what is the agenda here at the back of this? Because I think Pat has pointed out very clearly there the work that farmers have done and are willing to do into the future. And if we look at it, fertiliser use reduced last year by 15%. And my understanding is this current year it has reduced a further 15%. So that to me is definitely going to lead to an improvement in water quality. Farmers have taken a lot of responsibility, taken on the low emission slurry spreading, getting the slurry out at different times of the year on more of the land. And you know, what we're saying here is we put a proposal to this minister, to the commission, to merge the two figures together, that the 250 and the 225 are of inorganic fertiliser. Merge those two figures together. That means then if a farmer wants to continue with 250, can do so, will have the choice and use less inorganic or chemical fertiliser. So from our point of view, we've put a very clear, straightforward proposal to this minister. He is not delivering the message for us, and that's why I'm so frustrated. I'm so frustrated, and that's why we didn't take it lightly to be standing outside the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael think-ins last week. We had no choice. This minister has not been listening to farmers, and until he comes back in and understands where Dermot is with the sheep sector, so where we are with the dairy and the beef sector, and because all of this around this derogation is going to impact on every farmer in this country if we don't get a resolution to it.
Pat, I suppose Tim's approach is different to your approach. Tim is like, you know, better out than in, and protest and make loud noise, and hopefully that'll bring change. Ye go inside the doors and ye talk and ye try and see can ye affect change in that way. What do you think? Do you agree with Tim that there's something going on here, that maybe there's a particular agenda heading in a certain direction towards agriculture in this country?
Well, look, let's be very clear. When we did go in, obviously there was two predominant issues. There was payment dates and there was the 250 to 220. On the payment dates, we got a commitment from the Minister and his officials, that 2024 and beyond, that we'd return to the traditional dates of today and indeed mid-October. And we left them on no uncertain terms that those farmers that were approved in 2023 for payment should be paid on the traditional date. I suppose we've seen both the Minister for Agriculture and indeed the three political party leaders talk about not having a compulsory cull of the national herd. Now, I was involved in the Dairy Vision Group, and we gave an awful long time talking about a voluntary cull. The day for that is coming very, very soon, and that's budget day. McConalogue either delivers on behalf of agriculture an independent fund on budget day, or he doesn't.
So are we talking about a political call here then?
Well, I suppose that'll be up to the electorate around the country, with local, European and general elections possibly between here and this time 12 months. But as we all know, politicians are elected on a localised basis, and that can provide, I suppose, a fractious stall. But certainly there are challenges out there.
Well, finally, we're running out of time here, but speaking on the topic of elections, the three of you are coming to the end, we'd say in the next number of months, of your terms in your particular positions. Dermot, can I go over to you, and as president of the ICSA, now, there's plenty that will criticise someone who's at the top of a farm organisation that they didn't do this or they didn't do that. But what do you see in your tenure so far as one of the most prominent or biggest, we'll say, achievements that you've secured in your tenure so far?
I suppose the biggest thing we've represented a lot of farmers, and if maybe had got into different sector schemes and things. But there's a lot of things. Farmers are being hit and kicked and blamed for a lot of things, I think very unfairly. One of the reports done by the EPA last year, on a county-by-county basis, the cleanest county for water was Cork, where all the animals are. And the worst water quality was under Dublin, high density population. But no one will talk about that. And I mean, I'm living on the bank of the Lee.
Yeah.
There's about 5 different villages being pumped raw sewerage into the Lee. But they look at my 2 cows. I mean, there's an awful lot to be on. Like, farmers are a great scapegoat. We can blame them for everything because, you know what I mean? But
well,
I mean,
are you saying the politicians are using them as a scapegoat?
Yes, I actually
or
believe...
who are you saying? Are you saying politicians, environmental agencies, who?
Yeah, you take this hype about the national herd. The national herd was 7.4 million 50 years ago. And the graph hasn't moved. 1% up or down. It's the same. The demographics of the herd has changed, but the herd hasn't grown.
But we have global warming. The temperature is climbing, and we have to reduce our emissions some way.
I mean, look, in the 50 years, in the last 40 years, I have the same amount of cattle on my land. But in that 40 years, the world population has gone over to doubled. The amount of airplanes has gone thousands of %. You know, everyone wants a free car and a free holiday, and they want a laptop and they want Wi-Fi. But as my 4 cows on the causeway, the bloody cows are there for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
That's the scapegoating I'm talking about.
Yeah. Tim, the same to you. As I said, you're a fair man to face criticism. What would you say over your tenure as president of IFA you've achieved?
Yeah, I suppose, first of all, I'd like to say it's a privilege and an honour to lead 72,000 farmers for a 4-year period. And I suppose, I've been involved in a lot over the last 4 years, from the Brussels point of view. I think, during COVID, being able to get over there to Brussels and negotiate and hold back on convergence, hold back on the eco schemes to a lower level than the minister was going with 100% convergence, and we managed to hold him at 85% at that time. Look, that was dedication, hard work, and that's what we're elected to do. And I suppose, look, over the entire 4 years, again, the schemes and trying to get as much funding there as well for farmers as we can. But look, we're not finished yet. Neither of the 3 of us are finished here yet. And what I'm going to I want to finally say here, and I'm going to call on the minister again, stop using farmers as pawns. Get away from this political chamber we're in today and come out and support his Taoiseach and get this commissioner over here, that we can resolve what every farmer in this room is worried about, their future going forward, to ensure we can continue with this derogation until the end of this action programme. That's what I want to see happening. And we're not finished yet. I'll be continuing with this campaign as long as it takes to ensure the minister does that. And we have a budget coming up again, you're right, budget 2024. And we have put a lot of credible proposals in there as well. And obviously we want the minister to deliver on those proposals as well.
Pat McCormack from ICMSA, you'll be hanging up your presidential boots in a couple of short months, and you've presided, I suppose, during a time of record milk prices and record threats to the dairy industry, I suppose you could nearly say. So it's been an up and down story for your tenure.
Well, my tenure, I suppose, is that bit longer in that I had 6 years as president, 6 years as deputy president, and 2 years as dairy chairman before that. So if you go back to December 2009, when I was first elected there, it's like a game of two halves. Coming up to 2015, we had the lead into the abolition of quotas, and we had Minister Smith and then Minister Coveney and then Minister Creed, and it was all about what we could do for the national economy and increase exports. In the last number of years, the wind is very much in our face. But look, I've been involved in many great days and debates and challenges. I was in at the table representing dairy farmers in the beef talks at the time, when we got 3 and 4+ bonuses that weren't there in the past. We got a dairy calf to beef scheme. Obviously, we saw milk prices hit a record high in 2022. Yeah. But I suppose, to condemn myself, you can stay in politics a year too long. It's not any of the individuals here. We have to deal with whoever will follow us, and indeed to my 2 colleagues, you always have to deal with the deck of cards that's there, lobby on behalf of farmers, whether it's cap reform or whatever the case is. And now it's very much an environmental issue. And you have to play the cards to the best of your ability and your team's ability, because any of us, we only lead teams. And fortunate to have good team of spokespeople around you. But I suppose the national broadcaster hasn't helped us either, and that's been hugely challenging. There's a very different tang there now towards agriculture than what was in the run up to the abolition of quotas. When we had the celebration, we went from being the saviour to the demon.
Well, I suppose it's about education too, and having someone in situ. I mean, the likes of Agriland, for example, and other agri-media, we have the expertise in that, but maybe it's about just getting that expertise across to more mainstream media so that they can understand. I think COVID was a good indication of the importance of food production in this country, particularly. Like, there was no difference during COVID for farming and for farmer or agri-business. 365 days a year, farmers kept going, trying to milk cows or feed cattle, So I think that maybe brought it a little bit more into mainstream minds, and we hope that that continues. We'll certainly do our part in Agriland to try and push that message across as well. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time. I'd keep them here if I could, but they have their own tents as well to meet people in. So thank you very much for joining us. Pat McCormack from ICMSA, Tim Cullinan from the IFA, and Dermot Kelleher from ICSA. Thank you for joining us on our panel discussion here at the Agriland Pavilion. We'll head back out now to the ploughing site.